I want to say some books don't deliver on the promise of their title, but in Dune, you talk about fucking sand dunes. The first group that goes is the Vanir. The second group that goes is the Noldor. We are talking about Armada by Ernest Cline.
Why?
A hike through the goblin universe of Western Pennsylvania. Jeff the Killer, The Hunt for the Skinwalker.
No!
Science confronts the unexplained.
God! No! God!
Zach Bagans, Tom Bombadil, High King Ariendor.
Okay, you're just making up names now. Oh, God! I'm in hell!
Welcome to Nate's Nightmare November, Ben!
Words about wrestling, Ben.
Yeah.
It's finally happening. I've conned you into it. It's book related. You can't stop me.
I don't know if we've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but you've been pitching words about wrestling since season 1.
Yeah. And now it's happening.
Now it's happening.
Nate's Nightmare November.
It's not really a nightmare for me, though. I don't hate wrestling. Unless you're going to make me hate it.
6.5 hours later.
I'm becoming somewhat painfully aware. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find out.
So what's the book?
So the book is The Death of WCW by R.D. Reynolds and Bryan Alvarez.
WCW was the only wrestling network I've ever followed storylines in. It was on when I was a kid. I remember this. I remember it was WCW and WWF, and I don't remember which was on what channel.
WCW is on the Turner. So TNT, TBS.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember a lot about it, but I did watch this, so this will be relevant to me. I might know some of these people.
This week we're talking about The Death of WCW by R.D. Reynolds, who started WrestleCrap, and Bryan Alvarez, who is behind Figure 4 Weekly. I'm going to be going over a lot about WCW, and I'm going to try and source as much as possible from the book itself, though I admit that I have looked into this topic a lot in the past, so there's probably going to be some sources that kind of bleed in here and there. Not to mention the fact that I watched a lot of this, more the WWF side of things, but my own personal experience is going to be kind of mixed in here. If you're expecting a journalistic take on this, I don't know why you're listening to words about books. That's kind of on you. All right. Vince McMahon is just the greatest person ever and definitely not a sex offender.
Among other things. I mean...
Among other things.
He's up there for one of the worst persons ever.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe his son should have stabbed him in the neck.
Oh, did he try?
No. Apparently, this was a story that Paul Heyman... This is... You know what? This is all... I'm keeping it all in. Paul Heyman, former owner of ECW, and a manager and creative guy, and a whole bunch of different roles over the decades. Apparently, he was in a meeting with Vince and Shane, probably some other people. He didn't mention anyone that I recall. And Vince and Shane were in an argument, and Shane was really insisting on something, and Vince basically was like, well, the only way you're going to get that is if you stab me in the chest. Maybe it was the chest, not the neck. He had a knife on hand, too. And, it quickly went off the rails, and he also said something along the lines of, or you can buy me out and cast me aside when I get in your way the way I got rid of my dad when he got in my way. Now I'm like, did you kill your dad? Is that... Your dad disappears pretty quickly after you buy the company from him.
It's very Shakespearean. Fathers and sons, death and betrayal.
And apparently, if he didn't stab him in the chest right then and there, he'd make a note of that. That he doesn't have what it takes.
And there were other people in this room just watching.
There was at least one other person in the room.
Like, should we call HR? Do you guys need some space? Do you want to wait until maybe we're gone to have this conversation?
Nah, we want to put this in the ring. Let's make this into a program and have you guys fight.
Did they do that?
I don't know when this meeting took place, but Shane and Vince did have a match at a WrestleMania. It's weird. Wrestling is weird, and wrestling fans are terrible. And that's why we're here, Ben. Because I'm a terrible wrestling fan.
Sounds right.
So, the death of WCW, Ben. And, well, I don't know how long we're going to be here. Possibly forever.
Okay.
Because the book, it kind of sets the stage. Kind of talks about how wrestling was in the early days, how WCW, which is World Championship Wrestling, I don't know how... I guess maybe there's people who listen to our podcast that will listen to this episode for some reason, and so I'll educate them as well.
You should probably start from the beginning.
Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
You should. So we're talking about professional wrestling.
Professional wrestling.
I'm going to assume people know what that is.
They know that it's scripted, Ben. It's
Yes.
like theater, but occasionally they hit each other.
That
It's like an
happens in-
extended fight scene in a theater.
Yeah, okay.
They come out and they do their monologue and they hype up a fight, and then they have a fight that they both went over ahead of time, or sometimes they do it on the fly, but like they're both working together to put on a show, and they know who's going to win the fight and who's going to lose the fight in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then how did it come to there being two wrestling organizations on TV at when was this happening?
The
I was in
90s.
I was in 4th grade. I remember that much.
Wow, you too? You probably watched it earlier than I did. I don't know when you stopped watching. I tried to ascertain that. I
couldn't
started
tell you,
watching
man.
at like the end of 98, the beginning of 99.
I can tell you I had one of the N64 wrestling games, and I knew everyone that was
it
in that.
One of the good ones?
I have no idea. But then I could tell you by like the next system's wrestling games, I didn't know anybody in it.
It was a WCW wrestling game?
I think it was, yeah.
Was it World Tour or Revenge?
Oh god, I'd have to see the box art.
All right, we're doing this. This is important.
Okay. Are you sending me the box art?
Yeah, I'm sending you the box art.
It was Revenge.
Okay, so Revenge is widely considered as one of the best wrestling games ever made.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I remember playing it a lot.
Yeah, Revenge was awesome. There were some less than great wrestling games on that console that were just absolute utter garbage.
Yeah, I even recognize, I recognize, of course, Hulk Hogan and Goldberg. And I feel, is one of those Kevin Nash?
Yep, Kevin Nash is on there.
Okay, and then, I don't know, the other guy looks like Bret Michaels. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, that's Raven. He's the only one on there that wasn't a world champion.
Okay. Yeah, so see, I know stuff. I'm up on this. So that era was probably the last era I watched.
Yeah. And that era was also the last era of WCW.
Hey, I caught it at the height of its powers.
You did. We both did. And then it was just a long, slow, brutal slog to now. So, yeah, I'll just start at the beginning and we'll walk through this. You can ask questions as we go along. So we'll talk about how World Championship Wrestling even came to be.
I am curious about that because I feel it was WWF like the long running one.
Ah, see, they both have roots stretching back decades and decades and decades. There was a belief, the book spells it out, so it's an erroneous belief, but there is a belief that WCW's title lineage stretched back about 100 years at the time of its death in 2001.
That seems a little flowery.
It was more like the 40s, late 40s, early 50s.
That sounds better.
Because there were two NWAs, the National Wrestling Alliance and the National Wrestling Association.
Oh God, they always do that. There's always two organizations that are so stupidly similar. Like, I know in Taekwondo, I don't know if it's still this way, but there was the ITF and the WTF. The World Taekwondo Foundation and the International Taekwondo Federation.
Well, I don't know anything about the National Wrestling Association because I don't think it did much. The NWA that's famous and everyone remembers is the National Wrestling Alliance. So the National Wrestling
was that
Alliance,
like televised?
Yeah, so that kind of became a problem for the Alliance. So wrestling during the 30s, I think even beforehand. So wrestling was born out of carny acts.
Yeah, that fits.
Yeah. So at the time there were territories. And so you each promoted in your own area. And you didn't step on each other's toes because of the National Wrestling Alliance. A bunch of promoters met in the late 40s and they carved out territories, and anyone who wasn't part of the NWA who tried to start a promotion in someone else's territory, the NWA
they had to face the Illustrated Man.
Yeah, exactly. They would send all the top talent to that guy's territory and push the small guy out of business.
You mean like they'd send all the top talent to like kick his ass, or just?
So if you wanted to start
so you just put on a show right across the street from me?
Yes, but okay. I would use better talent because the NWA is sending me talent from all over the country, and you've got your rinky-dink crew, and I'm going to put you out of business. Unless you pay your dues and fuck off also to a different territory. You dick. It was a borderline monopoly.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in wrestling, I think.
And the NWA lasted quite a while. And was pretty influential for quite a while. But there was also a lot of infighting because the way you picked the so there was an NWA champion that would be picked by a board, I believe, a board of directors, or I don't even know if it's called a board of directors, but the owners of the territories would vote on who would be the champion, put the belt on that guy. That guy could then tour all the other territories. And the person who owned the contract for that guy got a cut of the gate.
It's weird that there needs to be a person who owns the contract.
Yeah. Well,
you ever
that's business, baby.
Have you ever watched anything on Dropout, that streaming service?
I didn't even know what that was. You enlightened me to a new streaming service.
I like it. It's a very good. It's what college humor became. But Dropout's actually a pretty cool little streaming service. And
is that why it's called Dropout?
Yeah. And they have a show on there where they make fun of TED Talks. And it's called the Smarty Pants Society. And they invite comedians to come and give a presentation on whatever they feel passionate about. And one of the presentations given was wrestling is drag. And the person giving the presentation compared professional wrestling to all the drag competitions like RuPaul's Drag Race and Dragula.
Well, don't tell that to Glenn Jacobs. As the mayor of whatever the fuck town in Kentucky, I want to say, or Tennessee, he's going to make sure that children don't see drag shows ever.
Well, and I was kind of thinking about that because the stuff going on at wrestling competitions and the way you're describing these wrestlers, like the infighting, the drama, if you will, between a bunch of like greased up muscle men who like to roll around on a mat, get real close to each other's regions. I don't know. If you're gonna ban drag, I feel like you got to ban this.
Well, Donald Trump is close friends with. Well, I guess Vince isn't at WWE.
Which one? Donald Trump was on WWF, right?
Yep.
Okay.
He's in their Hall of Fame.
Well, he used to be a fun joke. Like
Linda
it used
McMahon.
to be. It used to be funny when he was on TV.
Linda McMahon was his whatever of business, of small business in his first administration.
Jesus Christ, I didn't know that.
He's also a failed. What do you call someone who runs for Senate and fails because no one likes them? Linda McMahon. She's a Linda McMahon.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wait, Vince McMahon is actually still like he has a consistent marriage?
I assume that their marriage for probably the last few decades has been a marriage of like business.
Okay.
I would bet good money Linda was not at all shocked by any of the allegations against Vince.
I don't think was anyone?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Literally anyone?
Well, okay, I was I didn't know that trafficking would be one of the things that he was accused of.
I feel like China had been saying that for years.
Well, I don't listen to China, okay?
I think she's dead now,
I'm an
right?
American. Oh, I thought you meant China the country.
No, China the person.
Well, no one listened to her because
No one listened to her. That was the problem.
yeah. She dated the heir apparent who had an affair with. Well, I mean that's how he became the heir apparent. He cheated on her with Vince's daughter, and then we were just like, oh, China. Suddenly we don't have anything for you. Unemployment's over there. Bye.
So we might bounce around based on my very limited knowledge of this. I think it's coming back to me now as we talk about it. I think from like 4th grade or maybe 3rd grade to like 6th grade, I got deep into this.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the territories.
Okay, the territories.
So, some of the things the book cites as disputes between the owners of the NWA is like Vince McMahon Sr., the father, of course, of our current Vince McMahon, unfortunately. And he would book the NWA champion Buddy Rogers to just all the shows in the Northeast, which is where he's from, and just like never share the champion. And then when it came time for him to lose, he was sick, and oh boy, this is a real bad illness. We'll have to reschedule the match to a different time. Oh no, I twisted my ankle. So he stalled for a while before Luthez. Now this is weird because Rogers is involved in at least 2 stories. I don't know which one is true or not. But they're famous stories where he got out to the ring, either with Luthez or with Bruno Sammartino. And whichever guy it was, or maybe it was both guys, they told Buddy Rogers, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Meaning, you can either wrestle a scripted match and lose, or we can wrestle for real and I'll kick your ass and then you'll lose.
Yeah.
So he
was
lost.
was he getting old or?
In the case of the Lou Thez story, it was because he didn't want to drop the title. Vince didn't want him to drop the title, but everyone in the NWA voted, you're dropping the title. Vince didn't like Lou Thez because he didn't draw well in the Northeast.
Well, but how did they know they could beat him in a real match?
Because Lou Thez was a legitimate shooter. I guess I should say a shooter, someone who... Okay, I'm gonna bring this up. A shoot is when it's real. That's the inside term for real.
Okay, I did not know that.
That's work good. Is when it's scripted fake, right?
Okay.
That will be important later.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Okay, and a shooter is somebody who like specializes in the shoot style.
They were legitimate amateur wrestlers, probably, usually. And yes, they could legitimately out-wrestle people. In the case of Bruno Sammartino, Rogers was getting old. I think he was injured. He was on his last legs, and Bruno Sammartino was fucking gigantic.
So, in a shoot match, do they still like... Because there's like real
a shoot
wrestling
match is
like
just
Olympic.
A fight. Like
it
becomes a legitimate fight.
So it's just fist fight, wrestling on the ground. Whatever happens.
Yeah, and it's never booked that way. It just becomes that if there's a disagreement.
Well, I can't imagine you could ever ensure that.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous fight. There's several actually, but one is Antonio Inoki. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I'm a quarter Japanese, so I can get away with it. He was basically like the Japanese Hulk Hogan. He huge star over there. And I think it was against... God, I can't remember his name. Hold on. Let me just look it up. Great Antonio. You can look this match up on YouTube. It's not very long. The Great Antonio was just like this really fat guy. And he was refusing to like sell. So selling is where like I hit you and then you pretend like it hurt a lot, right? And there are certain people who you definitely want to sell for them or they're going to hit you for real. and then it's going to be a shoot, right?
Okay, I'm following this now.
So the Great Antonio, I believe, wasn't even a wrestler. He was just a big fat guy who looked impressive. And they brought him in, and they're like, okay, we'll put you in a match with Inoki. He's going to do this, and he's going to beat you. But he didn't sell Inoki's attacks, and I think he also may have like hit Inoki, and Inoki was like, okay, fuck this guy, and he beats the shit out of him to the point where like I think the referee had to like pull him off of him. He started stomping on him while he was on the ground. And I believe the Great Antonio leaves with like a fucked up bloody face because he didn't sell for Inoki, so you're gonna sell one way or the other.
Yeah, we gotta give the people what they paid for.
And to be fair to Inoki, it looks like during the match he's trying to work a match. It's like, oh, I'll put him in a headlock, and he's just it really seems like he's like, what the fuck are you doing? What in the hell? What are you doing? And so,
I mean, it seems like it would.
Antonio hits him first.
Oh,
just out of control, wild punches. So he kicks his ass.
Well, I was gonna say, it seems like it would take a decent amount of skill to sell something. To be honest, like I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to do it convincingly myself. So like it seems like it's just a bad idea. Like it's a bad situation to put a dude who doesn't know what he's doing in there just because he has an impressive physique.
Well, that's a lesson we still have not learned to this day, Ben. There are a lot of people who look real impressive who just suck at it. There's a more recent one with Brock Lesnar. You know him.
I know. Yeah, I do know him actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in a match, I think sometime in the last like 7 or 8 years. It seems a lot sooner, but it was he was with a guy, Braun Strowman, a real big dude. And the guy was hitting Brock just a little too hard. Brock wanted him to lighten up. And finally, he got one hit too many, and I think Brock does like a running, jumping knee into his fucking face, full speed. and he yells for everyone to hear, "Lighten the fuck up!"
Did that guy remain conscious?
He looked pretty dazed.
I was gonna say, because like Brock Lesnar is huge.
He's gigantic.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar, he's basically a shaved gorilla. He is humongous, and he's fast.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to like do that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, and that's the thing with a lot of these guys. Like, I will say, I'm not somebody who's ever like dismissed wrestling as like, you know, quote unquote fake, because like I do respect the physicality you must have to be able to even like, I guess, work a match. Like they're still jumping, they're still falling, you know, 10 feet
like
out of the air.
A lot
like
of cardio.
Yeah. I mean, that's not easy.
So going back to the territories, at some point, Vince McMahon Sr., he just is like, all right, fuck it. Buddy Rogers is my biggest draw. Lou Thez isn't a draw. I'm just going to make my own championship. The WWF Championship. And he just made Rogers the first champion. And he basically left the NWA.
What's the WW?
Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Oh, okay.
And eventually they dropped
he
one of the
anticipated the
Ws.
internet there a little bit.
Yeah. Despite never living to see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they drop one of the W's by the time the internet comes out. So, womp womp.
Probably for the best. That's too many W's.
So, cable TV came out around the 1970s.
It was all downhill from there.
It really upset the power dynamic because bigger promotions had cable TV, which means better exposure for their guys, which means their guys get better paydays, they're more over, draw bigger crowds, so they can afford to get more talent, and it's just a cycle that repeats itself where the top promotions just start concentrating more and more power. It sounds like a metaphor for capitalism, but it's not, Ben. It's not.
It's just a result of it.
It's just a result of it. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just deeply reflective of the system in which it operates.
So
right down to the human trafficking.
God damn, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. So, how the territories basically start to go away is because of cable TV and people actually willing to do something with it. Vince's son, Vince McMahon Jr., and don't call him Junior because he'll yell at you.
Can he still yell? His face is so fucking stretched now.
Yeah, no.
The dude looks like eviler Walt Disney.
He does. His fucking dye job and his pencil mustache.
Who in God's
who told
green
you that was
earth
a good idea?
do you think you're fooling with that hair dye, Vince?
I'm just as young and hip. I'm just as young and hip and virile.
I've never understood people who can't just age, because you always look worse when you do like way too much Botox. And Vince McMahon, I mean, the Botox is one thing. He looks terrible. but the dye, the hair dye, first off, how rich is this man? You can't go get it professionally dyed. You have to use like Just for Men black #3. What?
He's only got $2.5 billion, Ben. He can't afford hair dye, all right? You gotta at least be making in the 10 digits before the 11 digits before you start getting the good stuff, you know?
But to compare it to another ailing billionaire, I mean, Donald Trump at least has somebody like come in and like tie that mess together so it looks like he's not bald.
He's not bald. I don't know why you would even say that. And
to be fair, I used to say like Donald Trump, like, oh, he should just let himself age. But then I started seeing those Photoshop pictures of what he would look like bald. And it was like, oh boy, no, he's right.
Good call. Good call.
He's not right about a lot, but he's right about the hair thing. He should keep doing the hair thing. the tan, no, it's too much. But yeah, the hair. So these the cable TV.
Yeah. So Vince had, I should say Vince Jr., because we're not talking about senior. Vince Jr. buys the company.
I feel like we can just say this is Vince McMahon now.
Vince McMahon, yeah.
Does
Vince
Senior
McMahon,
do anything else?
No, Vince Senior there's like a thing in place where if Vince McMahon can't turn a profit or pay him off or whatever, then control of the company goes to like a trust or something. Anyway, he dies. Okay, he dies like within the year of selling it to his son.
Vince eviscerates him like a lion.
Yeah, he stabs him in the chest.
He kills all the children
that
his father had sired, and then he
get his corpse out of here. And he has a plan to aggressively expand by buying TV time all over the country. So he's leaving his territory because the territories are dead, and he is one of the few people who realize that. And with all that new exposure, he starts getting more money, and with that money, he starts buying more talent from other promotions and running them into the ground. One of those guys being Hulk Hogan. He was originally with what's called the American Wrestling Association, I think. AWA, whatever. And that basically spells the end of the AWA and the rise of the WWF, because Hulk Hogan becomes the front runner, and he starts selling all the merch and all the tickets and eating his vitamins that aren't steroids and saying his prayers and believing in himself, brother, and wearing the red and yellow and brother,
I'm a great guy. But when that camera goes off, brother, it's a different story, brother. Oh, brother.
And as we will discuss as we go on, because Hulk Hogan is a central key figure in the death of WCW, Hulk Hogan is kind of a piece of shit. He's kind of garbage. I kind of don't like him.
Okay, you're gonna have to tell me what he did.
He did so many things.
I don't know a lot about what he did, but like I do remember kind of liking Hulk Hogan when he was on TV.
He was the guy who essentially, in my opinion, he was the number one reason WCW died. And he will never ever step aside or put anyone else over. Putting over is where you lose in a convincing way where they look better as a result, right? He never wants to put anyone over. He always thinks that he's the top star. Forever, actually. He never stops thinking he is the top star. And he badmouths every place that he works in. While he's working there, he's garbage. And then he had Hogan Knows Best. There's a clip I saw where he talks about some people who are black and
Oh,
there is a
boy.
word that is bleeped.
Yeah,
And
I do remember
so
that.
I don't
You
know,
know what?
that
You're
he
right.
said the N-word, but
You're right.
he
I do
later
remember
says
that.
the N-word in a leaked sex tape where he has sex with his best friend's wife while his best friend records it.
Were either of them black?
No, they were just talking about the N-word. I don't even know the
What?
context. I just
In
know.
a sex tape?
Yeah, man. Maybe that's how he gets it up. I don't know.
Hulk Hogan said the N-word in a sex tape, but there were no black people there. He just...
Correct. Yeah, no, I don't know what possessed him to do that.
Huh, okay. I didn't know about this. I didn't know
Yeah.
about this.
And of
I
course,
rescind. I guess I retroactively I did
he
not
famously
enjoy Hulk
endorsed Donald Trump.
Hogan. I was there for that. I stopped liking him by then.
Yeah, no, every time he's come out in the last few years to the WWF or WWE now, he has been soundly booed.
I didn't know that either. That's hilarious.
Yeah, he came out at WrestleMania several years ago and got booed. One time someone mentioned his name and the crowd started booing. He wasn't even at the building. Someone just mentioned his name and no one likes him.
So how does he take that? How does he play it off?
I don't care.
Okay.
Him. But yeah, he helps lead a wrestling renaissance in the 80s by being the top guy in the WWF and selling shitloads of merchandise and definitely having a very natural physique.
You know, I'll tell you, I can only remember from the WCW era, other than his age at the time, he wasn't like crazy huge.
No, it was more in the 80s when it looked like someone hooked up an air pump to him and just...
Okay.
Because in the early 90s, there was a massive steroid scandal that affected him and the WWF. And as a result, Vince wanted to focus on leaner guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And Hogan was like, that's not going to work for me, dude. And he packed his shit up and left, refusing to lose to either of them on the way out, by the way.
So I'll be honest with you. I'm honestly shocked that they cared that these guys were on steroids.
Well, Congress had nothing better to do. They still have nothing better
Congress got involved.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
You're burying the lead on a lot of this.
Massive steroid scandal in the early 90s.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a big deal.
I mean, did anyone not know?
Did anyone not know? That was I don't know what you're talking about. Hogan had a very natural physique. He ate his vitamins. He said his prayers. He believed in himself, brother.
The Yavapai Indian strap match, Jack.
Does anyone like look? I don't so much these days because my shoulder is not handling it well anymore. But I used to lift weights a lot, and like when you spend a lot of time at the gym, like it's obvious who's who's taking their daily vitamins and who's not. You know,
This Flintstones chewables, man.
I've unironically heard somebody say, "What's your cycle, bro?"
So now we have one end of this equation, the Monday Night Wars, right? The other end is the soon-to-be WCW. So we need to talk about Ted Turner, media mogul Ted Turner. Put Channel 17 on satellite, and everyone laughed at him. But he had Atlanta Braves baseball, the Andy Griffith Show, and wrestling, Ben. And that was apparently enough to not only keep that station running, but make it explode.
He would later go on to get the Star Wars movies, and Revenge of the Sith is probably playing on TNT right now.
Oh, he was out by then.
I know, but still.
I thought you were going to say that he would later go on to find 5 children and give them magic rings so they could summon him in makeup and he can save the planet.
Did he do that?
Captain Planet? He's
I
a
know-
hero?
I
Gonna take pollution down to zero?
I will admit at first I thought you had miscounted the number of rings given to the dwarves, but but I did eventually realize it was a Captain Planet joke. No, I was asking if he had anything to do with Captain Planet or if you were just referencing something.
No, I think he had something to do with Captain Planet. I think that was his thing.
What are the odds that the people who made Captain Planet cared even a little about the environment?
Protect the environment, or I'll kill you, Captain Planet!
I'm sure they cared about the environment in the same way Al Gore did. Just don't look at how much power his house is using, and we're fine.
Okay, so we're into the 90s. Vince McMahon has started the WWF.
Well,
TNT
the problem
is,
here, so we're in the 80s.
We're in the
Ben.
80s, I'm sorry.
So Turner had a wrestling show. I believe it was Mid-South. That's what I wrote down. Mid-South Wrestling. So Vince McMahon did some shady backroom shit to buy out the majority of Mid-South so that he could have that great prime time spot. And then, so in the South, wrestling is like, it's wrestling, you know? It's not about colorful characters. It's about the homoerotic wrestling. And that's not what they got. They got the colorful characters and the, like the drag stuff, like you said. And that's not cool. And so Turner basically wanted to kick McMahon off. He gave other people time slots basically for free. He aired another wrestling show an hour ahead of time. This pissed off Vince McMahon forever. He hates Ted Turner as a result. And eventually, Vince McMahon sold the rights after like a year to that primetime slot to Jim Crockett Jr. I'm going to yada, yada, yada. Jim Crockett Promotions basically went out of business because they spent too lavishly, and who would come along to buy it but Ted Turner, and that's what became WCW. And again, yada, 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 WCW had a controlling stake in the NWA at the time, which basically was all but dead. So the NWA champion was also the WCW champion. And so now we've basically, the territories, for the most part, are dead and dying and off, except for WWF, which is the leader, and WCW, which Vince McMahon hates and is going to be an ass about.
Okay. I mean, it seems like I honestly can't tell when he's being an ass because he hates something and when he's being an ass because he has a personality disorder.
Or when he's being an ass because it gets him ahead in his business. So... Oh, no. Oh, I actually took more notes down here. So... he sold the time slot to Jim Crockett Jr. for $1 million. And Vince McMahon told him, "You'll choke on that $1 million." So that was nice. Then there are numerous occasions where Vince would run shows opposite big Jim Crockett shows in order to run him out of business, which is important because he will later bitch and whine and cry that WCW is doing the same thing to him in the 90s. So
he seems like a very dramatic person.
Yeah, one of the things was Starrcade, which was the biggest show for Jim Crockett Promotions that usually aired traditionally around Thanksgiving. Vince McMahon created the Survivor Series to run on the same day. And cable companies were like, "Oh, sweet, we'll sell one and then they can watch the other. Hell yeah, 2 shows? Awesome." But Vince said, "If you run Starrcade over Survivor Series, you're not going to get WrestleMania. So basically, every cable promotion except like 2 did not run Starrcade. And so he lost a bunch of... Jim Crockett lost a bunch of pay-per-view buy money, which was important because they were bleeding money everywhere.
Okay. What year are we at?
We are now at the beginning of the 90s.
Okay, this is we're nearing where I would be paying attention.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of yada yada so we can get into when WCW Nitro starts, which is when you would be paying attention.
Yeah.
So
We need to get me in this story.
yeah, that's important. So WCW has always had a lot of problems with creative, among other things. It's a corporate, like it's corporate because it's in the Turner structure, but like it's also carny wrestling, so it's weird.
Okay.
So
What is the weirdness you're talking about?
well, I just wrote down. I tried to take sparse notes on this stuff because I didn't want to be talking for. Oh wow, look at that, 48 minutes. We're not even to Nitro yet. So like, for example, Dusty Rhodes, big time star in the 70s and 80s, I believe.
Mhm.
Some people may know him as the fat dancing guy in Polka Dots, but before that, he was a fat guy who was not in Polka Dots, I guess. Also, the dad of current WWE champion Cody Rhodes. Anyway, Dusty was the booker at one time, actually at several times, and he was mad at Ric Flair. Ric Flair being the Hulk Hogan of WCW, I'll say. He was
the woo guy, right?
yeah, platinum blonde hair.
Yeah.
Says woo a lot.
That guy was on steroids.
Was he? Yeah, probably was.
Yeah, I mean,
he was definitely leaner than Hogan, though.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, I must not have... I'll have to go back and watch some old Hulk Hogan stuff. I must not have realized how big he is.
Oh, he's gigantic.
Huh.
So Dusty wanted Ric Flair. He was mad at Ric Flair, and so he booked him to lose the championship in 5 minutes. Flair threatened to quit, but Jim Herd, who I wrote down professional dumbass, no one really liked Jim Herd. He was the boss at the time, though. He had worked at a Pizza Hut at some point as some sort of manager there. And now he was running a wrestling company for Ted Turner.
Are you talking about he was an executive in the Pizza Hut Corporation, or he managed a Pizza Hut?
That's a good question, and the answer is yes. He was one of those things, Ben.
Okay.
So Jim Herd went over Dusty's head and booked another match where Flair would win. So when Rhodes heard that Jim Herd said, no more blood, can't have any more blood, that's new company policy, Rhodes booked an angle where he got in a fight with the Road Warriors. They grabbed him and stabbed him in the fucking eye with a spike, and he bled everywhere like a stuffed pig, and he immediately got fired. And then he went to the WWF where they put him in polka dots.
Okay.
The book then brings up Ole Anderson's hilarious booking, where he had evil black magic. A guy named the Black Scorpion, who used evil black magic. He was a masked man. He was Sting's like major opponent. Like, oh my god, who is it gonna be? And it just turned out to be Ric Flair in the end because they didn't actually plan for who the guy was going to be. And they were like, ah, shit, we got to put the championship on this guy. It's Ric Flair, I guess.
So, canonically, Ric Flair learned black magic?
Yes, but he immediately forgot it, apparently, after he unmasked. and it was never spoken of again.
That's kind of awesome. I like that.
So Dusty was replaced by Ole, and then when Ole failed to do what needed to be done, he was replaced by Dusty. These are the decision making processes of this company.
Wait, Dusty's back at WCW?
Yes, I'm yada yadaing a little bit of time here.
Wow.
Flair left, so this would be about 92 or 93. Flair left because Jim Herd thought Ric Flair was over the hill. This was when he was at age 42, and Ric Flair wrestled. I think he wrestled his last match like 3 years ago, and literally almost died in the ring because he was like a 60-plus-year-old man. It was bad. Anyway, he wanted Ric Flair to shave his trademark hair, wear an earring, and call himself Spartacus. That sounds awful. So Flair left. And he took the championship with him because he was still the champion. So this is where some weirdness comes in, because the NWA title, which is what it was at the time, you had to put down a deposit on it. And you get your deposit back when you drop the title. And since Flair never got his deposit back, he just kept the title. And he sent it to Vince McMahon.
I'm sorry. Put a deposit on it?
You had to pay $10,000. I presume so that you didn't like, if you lost it, they use that $10,000 to make a new belt, or
we're talking about the physical belt?
The physical big gold belt in the days of the NWA.
Is it actually made of gold?
I believe it is.
What?
I believe it's legitimately made of gold. It's a heavy ass, like, people don't realize how heavy those championship belts are. Wrestlers describe it as 10 plus pounds, depending on the championship.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right?
So Ric Flair literally walked out of there with a solid gold championship belt.
Yes. And then he mailed it to the competition.
So this is like a sacred relic. Like they can't just declare a new champion. They've lost their. This is like taking the sign of a dojo.
Yeah,
they just have to close
had to make a new belt.
But how do you even do that? Because Sauron poured his entire soul into the forging of the first belt.
What you do is you sue the other company.
Yeah, there you go.
So that they can't use your trademarked images, one of which is your title belt.
Are you going to tell me they melted down this belt?
No, they did not melt the belt down. I think they do eventually get it back. Because Flair is only going to be gone for about a year.
But he sent the belt to someone else.
Yeah, he sent it to Vince, and Vince used it for promotional material. And then Flair came on. Flair would eventually become the WWF champion. Twice, actually. And I believe Flair retained ownership of the belt until he eventually goes back to WCW a year later.
Do they give him his deposit back?
No. I have never heard them doing that. So
he had a lot of cleaning fees that they made up.
The problem with this for Jim Herd, other than the fact that our champion and our title belt just walked to the competition, is that Ric Flair
we should design a company where they can't do that.
I mean,
like, the belt should belong to us, right?
So keep this in mind, okay? This is going to become real important as the later Monday Night Wars kind of play out. Belts going to companies. Just remember Vince did it first, okay? Just remember Vince started this, okay?
Okay.
So the problem for Jim Herd is that Ric Flair was Ted Turner's personal favorite wrestler, and he was fucking pissed that they lost him.
Well, yeah, I mean, shouldn't you like this is because you wanted him to shave his head?
For no reason, yes.
So you've got a guy who has like a decade of branding is Ric Flair, such that even I know who he is and can picture him doing his trademark woo. And you want him to just, for seemingly no reason, change his entire branding, just throw that away. I mean, that would be like buying Twitter and naming it X.
Yeah, and no one would be stupid enough to do that.
One would be stupid enough to do that.
We're in the brightest timeline where that didn't happen. So, other stupid shit that happened, Lex Luger, who is definitely on the juice.
I do remember him.
He is gigantic, and he was a bodybuilder. He was supposed to beat Ric Flair before Ric Flair left, so they had they had Lex Luger beat a replacement, and then turn heel. Heel meaning he became a bad guy. No one wanted this. Everyone booed him out of the building. There were loud chants over the next year, "We want Flair. We want Flair." Let's see. What other stupid shit happened? A death chair cage match happened during this time.
What is a death chair cage match?
It's a cage match with an electric chair in it. And at the end, the loser is put in the chair and electrocuted to death.
But we have established that black magic exists in the world of wrestling.
Well, the thing is, the lever for the electric chair kept falling during the match, and someone had to keep raising it back up. And when they strapped someone into it, the lever fell prematurely, so they had to put it back up and then throw the lever and then pretend like he was getting shocked to death. It was horrible.
It just seems like a bad idea from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a stupid thing, just overall. And Lex Luger wanted to leave, and he was going to go to Vince McMahon's Bodybuilding Federation. Yes, this was a real thing. And then after spending a year there, he was going to debut for the World Wrestling Federation.
Okay.
So Jim Herd was fired so that Dusty Rhodes could return again. I can't believe I wrote this.
Did they get their blood back?
No.
Oh.
So the big problem here is it was a revolving door of managers. No one knows what the goal is, because some people would cut costs to get under budget, and some people would spend a lot of money in order to compete with Vince McMahon. Those are two conflicting goals. No one has any clear vision. They eventually hire a guy named Bill Watts, who would have been a great addition if this were the 1970s, but it was the 90s. He did things like, you can't jump off the top rope. That's a disqualification. Wrestlers can't mingle outside of, like good guys and bad guys can't mingle outside of the arena because that would break kayfabe. And we can't drop the illusion, right? He also removed the protected mats from the ringside. Bad idea. He got rid of catering. You can't leave after your match is over. You have to stay for the whole show.
Can you legally get rid of catering? I guess these guys aren't in a union.
Yeah, you're independent contractors.
Huh.
So he started shouting at the suits of WCW as well. He was prone to like angry outbursts. And then, oh boy, he said something on like a radio show, like some small radio show about how restaurants should be allowed to not serve blacks or gays. His words, not mine.
What is it?
And
why do so many people?
Someone found that and showed that to, I believe it was Hank Aaron, the baseball player. And he then got real mad about that, and Bill Watts was canned. Bill Watts then went to WWF, where he was also he quit almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean that just that guy sounds terrible. I don't know how he ever got there to begin with.
Yeah, because he was a big hit in the 1970s. Remember the good old days when you could say disparaging things about black people or gay people? Bill Watts does, apparently.
But why do you want to? I mean, I get like, I don't even know how that would matter. How does it come up?
How does it come up that you start talking about restaurants being able to not serve people based on color or orientation? I don't know, Ben. I don't know. But maybe you should shut the fuck up, you know?
I just can't even imagine being employed in the field of professional wrestling and having a problem with gay people.
Don't ask, don't tell, Ben.
Like,
It's not gay if your balls don't touch, okay?
I'm pretty sure they do, though.
So let's see, where are we at? Yeah, so he's out. Talks about more stupid storylines. So what they do is they spend a lot of money for no reason on a lot of stupid shit. For example, Cactus Jack, also known as Mick Foley, also known as Santa Claus, gets fucking murdered by a powerbomb on the outside, which, remember, does not have protective mats. A powerbomb, for those of you who don't know, is where you pick up your opponent. His groin is right in your face. This is not helping the case. But basically, someone lifts up your entire body weight and then throws your entire body weight to the ground. And there's no real easy way to take that move. And he did it on the mats, and I believe this was on the concrete. And I believe in his book, this was the event where he said he went out to try to purposely get injured to end his career and collect an insurance settlement, and it didn't work.
Yeah, that seems like a bad plan.
And this led to Cactus Jack getting amnesia and having a bunch of vignettes where he is lost in Chinatown. And it is terrible, and no one liked it. Or the time where Sid and Vader showed up to Sting, you remember Sting, and Davey Boy playing volleyball with orphans? And Sid and Vader are in a warboat and challenge them to a fight at Beach Blast. And then a one-eyed midget, this their words, not mine, named Cheatham plants a bomb on Sting and Davey's boat. I just wrote what after that. This is the stupid shit that's been going on here, but one man's coming to save the day. Third string announcer Eric Bischoff. You might actually remember Eric Bischoff.
Do remember Eric Bischoff because he's very small.
Yeah, but he knows karate.
Yeah, he made that look really bad.
Yeah, he did. So Eric Bischoff, he knew wrestling, but he was not seen as a wrestling guy. By the higher up saw him as a business guy, but he knew like entertainment.
Yeah, because he was really small.
There you go. So they knew he would be able to talk to the higher ups while still being able to talk to the boys, and he'd be able to turn this ship around. Now, the book does assert at this point, okay, there's a few things. When you're hot, you can do no wrong. When you're cold, everything you do is fucked. That's going to come up later. A lot.
Okay.
A lot. And so it also asserts that in later years, people will be like, well, we didn't know who was at the top calling the shots. It didn't have an executive guy like Vince McMahon at the top who made all the final says on everything, and who could pull the plug on an angle if he wanted to, or who could say, oh, we're gonna go with this guy. They didn't have that. However, at the time, the book asserts that everyone knew who was in charge, and it was Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, I mean, he was on. Well, by the time I was watching, he was on TV. I remember not like I remember knowing he was in the company somehow, but I don't remember knowing really who he was. But I have always known who Vince McMahon was, so
Yeah.
the branding wasn't really on point there.
So Eric Bischoff, he learned about the business while he was in the AWA. There's that company again. He moved WCW to Disney for better control of the product and the costs. We can just, if an audience member if they're booing the wrong people, cheering the wrong people, let's get new people in here. Fuck you. Also, they could tape 3 months in advance, which cut a lot of costs, but there's a lot of shit in there. Like, the Hollywood Blondes would win the titles and then lose the titles, and also one of them got injured, so they had to completely scrap a match. There was like...
I remember I did go to a taping. Like, I went to a live taping, and I was so confused. Because none of it lined up with what was going on TV.
Oh, you probably went to a house show.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the non-canon almost.
Yeah. I didn't even really know who any of the people were.
Oh, yeah, because WCW is infamous for having, like, the C team. WWF still put people like, Stone Cold occasionally on house shows, or like Mankind, or, like they put at least high Bs, low As on their shows. But WCW put like the C team, like, and here's, fuck, I can't even think of one. Glacier?
Yeah, no, I can't remember who I saw. I remember, like, I had fun. Like, it was a cool time. But I do remember being very confused because it was not what I was expecting at all. And they were taping it. Because I remember a guy double flipping off the camera when they did, like, the crowd shot. And the cameraman, like, just putting the camera down and walking up to the guy and being like, "Sir, it's a family show. You can't do that. If you do it again,
maybe it
I'll
was
have to
like
ask
a
you to
taping
leave."
of like WCW Saturday Night,
That might have been.
which was the C show at the time. Right now, WCW Saturday Night, where we're at in the story, is their only show. And so, oh yeah, another thing real quick that needs to be factored into 3 months of taping in advance. Sid Vicious, yes, that's his name. He was supposed to win the world championship, and he stabbed Arn Anderson with a pair of scissors multiple times and was fired. So, yeah, that kind of...
I mean, was that all that happened?
Kind of derailed the...
He was just fired?
Yeah, it's wrestling. You don't go to jail over attempted murder in wrestling, Ben.
That you should. I mean, I don't think they get to decide that. Though apparently they do, I guess.
Well, I hate to tell you, but oh god, Bruiser Brody was in a show in Japan and was murdered, and no one ever faced charges, even though they're pretty sure they knew who the guy who murdered him was and why he was murdered. wrestling, Ben.
Huh.
So, Bischoff, Ben, doing a great job cutting costs, controlling the crowd and whatnot, and having better grasp of the product than his predecessors. And he knows how they're going to get mainstream attention, brother. We got to get the Hulkster, dude.
Okay.
So Hulk Hogan had just left the WWF and had a God, there's really no way of saying it. A failed film career because he sucks. And he ain't no Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so the
I don't
Hulkster,
even remember him being in a movie.
Yeah, because they all sucked. The Hulkster wanted $300,000 per match, 25% of pay-per-view revenue, 25% of house show revenue for the shows that he's on, and 65% of his merch revenue. And also, eventually, he will open up Pastamania, brother. The Hulkios.
Did they give him that?
It opened up in the Mall of America, and it did not do well.
Not the pasta thing, the other stuff.
Oh, yes, of course they did.
Oh my God. You're just making that guy your whole company.
I want to point out at some point that that Hogan was nearly broke. He made more money per match than I will make in a year. And he was
several
broke
times
later.
over.
Fuck this guy.
Yeah.
He then brought in all of his friends, which is something he would later do as part of Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, which I'll talk about at the end of this because that's kind of a mirror of WCW in the sense that it reflected WCW. It was also a failure for largely the same exact reason. Hogan and Bischoff would blow $1,000 a night on sushi, and I just wrote how and also fuck you.
Yeah, nothing but blowfish.
Maybe.
He was on a blowfish cleanse.
So a lot of 80s wrestling fans, the book says, of the WWF lost interest in the early 90s when all their favorite stars went away, and they were brought back in to the fold when guys like Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man showed up on WCW. And so it started attracting a bigger audience. Vince McMahon had apparently been sending letters to Ted Turner calling his promotion an embarrassment, that he should shut it down. And so Ted Turner wanted to destroy Vince McMahon. And so apparently he calls in Eric Bischoff and he's like, hey, doing a great job. We got Hulk Hogan. Why are we not kicking this guy's ass? And Bischoff was like, well, I mean, Vince has primetime TV on Monday night. And Ted was like, gotcha. You got primetime TV on Monday night. And Eric Bischoff was like, well, let's run it head to head. Actually, I think they gave him, I think Raw at the time was an hour. So Bischoff wanted 2 hours. So he would have 1 hour unopposed and 1 hour head to head. And that's how Nitro was born. And Ted Turner wanted to fucking kick this guy's ass. So
I'm going to ask you, we've arrived at Nitro.
We've arrived at Nitro.
We're an hour and 15 minutes into the recording. Is this a place you want to split?
I think I can get through 96. The year 1996. And then that will cover kind of the rise. And then we can start talking about the fall and death.
Okay. Let's do it.
So the Nitro debut. If you've never watched it, you should watch it. It's cool as hell because it's in the Mall of America.
Oh,
like, it's just in the middle of the Mall of America.
I believe what you're saying. I just don't know that I will think that's as cool as you do, but we will see.
It looks real cool.
I'll watch it for next time.
So, the show also... So normally, like Raw, for example, and even WCW Saturday Night, it was a bunch of what we call squash matches, which are just one-sided ass kickings. It's usually a star versus a guy nobody knows, who is usually pale and skinny, and who looks very unimpressive. To make the star look more impressive, by comparison, the star will then hit his moves a whole bunch of times to get those moves over and kill that guy. That's not Nitro, baby. Nitro is going to have real competitive matches between stars, brother.
Okay. I take it one of them was Hulk.
Well, yeah, Hulk Hogan had the main event, dude. And at the main event, who should show up in the crowd but Lex Luger, who was in the WWF 3 days prior, 2 days prior. He had a handshake agreement with Vince. Like, yeah, I will stick around. I'm going to re-sign my contract. Then he signed a contract with Eric Bischoff in secret and showed up on Nitro, and that was a big deal at the time. It was oh my God, this is a must-see thing. Who else is going to show up, dude?
Did anyone else show up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Also some things. So the real beginning of the Monday Night War, September 11, oh my God, a 9/11 world then, in 1995. And the original belief was that the Monday Night Wars would split the audience, but that's not what happened. The audience actually grew and grew and grew and grew until the end of this book when the audience fucking collapses. So Eric Bischoff had a monitor installed under his desk that was airing Monday Night Raw because Raw was taped. And so he spoiled the results live on Nitro in an attempt to be like, oh, I already know the outcome. I don't have to watch that other show. I'm going to watch Nitro.
that seems illegal.
Well, it's wrestling, dude. I also don't know if it's illegal. They never sued, and WWF was a sue-happy company, you know? So, also around this time, Turner Broadcasting was merging with Time Warner. That'll be important later. And in 5 years from now, it's going to start merging with AOL, which will be very important to the story.
Okay.
So,
I think I might remember some of that. Yeah.
And by the end of 1995, the women's champion from the WWF came over with the title belt and threw the title belt in the garbage on Nitro. That's important, Ben.
Did WCW have a women's division?
He promised Alundra Blaze that he would make a women's division and then didn't do it.
I was going to say, I didn't remember one.
Yeah, it sure wasn't. And this also killed the WWF women's division for several years. They eventually reintroduced the title, I think, in 98? All right.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So, who arrived in the middle of a match between nobodies? I didn't even bother writing them down because who cared? But in the middle of a match, without any promotional packages or anything that highlighted that he was showing up, Scott Hall, who was Razor Ramon in the WWF. He was in the crowd, he jumps the rail, he cuts a promo about how... It was a famous promo. I'm not going to go into it. He was addressing Ted Turner, he was addressing Eric Bischoff. They made it seem like this guy from the WWF came over from the WWF to fight Eric Bischoff for making fun of WWF, spoiling their match outcomes. Like, yeah, you want a wrestling war? Scott Hall's here to fight you. They never used the term WWF. Because they didn't want to get sued, but Vince McMahon did sue them.
Yeah.
For copyright infringement. Scott Hall was acting too much like his character Razor Ramon for their tastes. But they went ahead.
Did he win the lawsuit?
That's going to be settled in 1999 or maybe at 2000. And and they settled it out of court, and it was sealed.
Okay.
But the popular belief is that as a result of the lawsuit, the WWF had the right to either match or at least outright purchase the WCW if it's ever up for sale. Spoilers for what will eventually happen. The book also points out that TV ratings were the focal point for Eric Bischoff, whereas before it was pay-per-view buy rate and house show numbers. That'll also be important later. Bischoff talks up a lot how he's kicking Raw's ass in the ratings, though, which is true. And then Kevin Nash shows up. Big Sexy is what some people called him.
Remember him being called that, but okay.
He was Diesel and a former WWF champion.
Big Daddy Cool, Diesel!
Never mind the fact that he was at the time the lowest drawing WWF champion. We're not going to go into that.
You know how I asked you earlier, is one of these guys Kevin Nash?
Yeah.
That's what I know about Kevin Nash. I know he was blonde.
Yeah, Kevin Nash. Well, he had black hair when he was Diesel, but he dyed it like Vince McMahon dyes it.
I don't know who the fuck Diesel is.
Diesel is Kevin Nash, but with black hair.
Oh, okay.
Like Vince McMahon dyes his hair now.
Yeah, so he can be evil or Walt Disney.
So they challenge. I'm yada-yadaing through a few months of build, but they challenge WCW to a 3-on-3 match. Eric Bischoff's going to assemble a team, and they're like, who are your guys going to be? And Bischoff is like, I'm not going to tell you. So they kick his ass and powerbomb him. Again, powerbomb. Not a fun move to take. So Bash at the Beach happens. And you got Sting. You know Sting. He's like the guy most people associate WCW with.
Yeah, he was my favorite.
He never worked in the WWF until like he worked 2 matches in like 2016, but we don't talk about that because they sucked. And then Lex Luger and the Macho Man. They are going to be Team WCW against Hall, Nash, and a mystery partner. So what happens is Hall and Nash come out without their guy, and they're like, he'll come out when he's ready to come out. And then they proceed to 2-on-3 beat the shit out of these guys. Luger is like injured and taken out of the match almost right away. And the commentary team is like begging, like we need someone out here. Like we're getting the shit kicked out of us in a fair fight, 2-on-2. And Hulk Hogan comes out, and they're like, "Oh, thank God! Now it's a 3-on-2 fight again. We can do this." And Hulk Hogan, he gets in the ring. The Outsiders bail. That's what they're called. Hall and Nash, the Outsiders. Sting's on the outside. Hall and Nash bail to the outside. Macho Man's in the ring. And Hulk Hogan hits him with the leg drop, brother! He turns heel.
Yep.
He hit him with a couple leg drops, actually. Supposedly, Hogan didn't know if he wanted to turn heel, because he never did well as a heel. He was a heel like in the early 80s or late 70s. Didn't go so well. He'd always been the top guy as a babyface. And the book says, and I can believe this, Hogan had a trick where he would leave to film a movie during like NFL playoff season, because the ratings are naturally going to go down when popular sports are on. And then he would show back up right around the end of playoffs, and oh, look at that, the ratings popped up because I'm here, brother. But this time he fucked up and he was gone too long and the ratings bumped up without him. So he didn't really have a choice. I heard that if Hogan didn't turn heel, Sting was going to do it. So Hulk Hogan, he did. He turned heel. And he cut the fans started pelting the ring with garbage. He cut a promo about, because he was already getting booed at this point anyway. People were kind of over the like goody two shoes, baby face, eat your vitamins, not the steroid ones, and say your prayers, brother. So Hulk Hogan was the official third member of what was going to be dubbed the NWO, the New World Order, Ben.
I had an NWO t-shirt, and in retrospect, that was not a good t-shirt.
So the book warns, one of the lessons is that the NWO didn't immediately increase buy rates. It didn't immediately increase viewership. It still took time, which is something that they don't learn a lot in wrestling, where they just lose faith in people after like a few weeks and go, well, you're never going to be anything. And they drop them. So the NWO were cool, Ben. They would attack everyone.
I know. I as I mentioned, had a t-shirt.
Yeah. They attacked good guys and bad guys, which was new.
The New World Order has some other connotations, though, that I don't think anybody thought about.
No. Not at all.
And as a fourth grader, I sure as shit didn't.
Yeah. Well, don't. Continue to not think of those things.
As an eighth grader, I think I did still have that t-shirt, and I did start to realize the other connotations, and I was like, oh, I can't believe they did this. But now that I'm hearing some of the stuff they say in their sex tapes and whatnot, I am starting to understand why they might not have realized that.
Oh yeah, I need to make special mention of this because it comes up a lot. WCW is really good at losing money. One of those is a show called Hog Wild, which would later be renamed to Road Wild after Harley Davidson threatened a lawsuit for the use of the word hog. It was a show that had 0 buys because you just showed up on a motorcycle in the crowd and there was no gate. What a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So this is also a key important figure that will come up later. Referee Nick Patrick. This fucking guy. He's secretly an evil referee at the moment. So he accidentally trips up Lex Luger in his match and allows Scott Hall to roll him up. And, oh, look at that. Scott Hall wins. That'll be important later in like a year in wrestling time. So remember Nick Patrick for next episode. Probably. He'll show up one more time in this tale. I'll bring him up again. It's okay. So, and then Hogan wins the big gold belt that they got back after Ric Flair eventually brought it back. And he spray paints it with NWO, Ben. He's the champion again, brother. He beat the Giant. The Giant would then eventually turn and join the NWO. And then later on in this story, he will turn again and leave the NWO. I don't remember why he does either of these things. Maybe he shouldn't have.
I seem to remember there was also a Wolf Pack.
Oh, God. That will be later when the NWO starts to split apart.
Has a negative connotation. And I don't think they realized at the time.
No, not at all. So the things that stood out about the NWO is their vignettes were different. They were cut different. They were designed to look... If you look it up on YouTube, it's pretty clear. It's a lot of like... It's like hand cameras, different angles, fast camera shots. Because one of the stories Kevin Nash tells is when they're in the studio cutting this promo, Hulk Hogan's still talking about Hulk Hogan, brother. Let me tell you something, brother. And he's cutting all these promos like it's the 1980s. And Kevin Nash was like, oh my God, we're fucked. and the editor was like, don't worry, I got this. And that editor deserves a fucking, deserves royalties forever. Like,
Don't worry. I'm the guy who saved Star Wars.
So, do you remember the fake Sting, Ben?
Yes.
So, this was an angle where none of the fans bought it as Sting, but all the wrestlers had to pretend like this guy totally looks like Sting. A guy attacked Lex Luger, and oh my God, he looked like Sting, brother. I think he also attacked a luchador. I think he attacked a luchador and was like, oh my God, he keeps saying Sting in Spanish. Or maybe he said like 5 in Spanish or something. Like, oh, I had 4 guys, but the NWO only has 3 guys. What's going on? So, Sting is going to be real important until the end of 1997, where he will be far, 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 far less important. But big star, multi-time world champion, the guy everyone associates WCW with outside of maybe Ric Flair. And so Sting, he's begging the 4 Horsemen, also a negative connotation. The 4 Horsemen are fighting the New World Order. So Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, 2 of the members of the 4 Horsemen, and Lex Luger and Sting, they're going into what's called a War Games match. I don't have time to tell you in detail. It's 2 rings. It's a giant steel cage. It's 4-on-4. It's awesome when it's done right. Shut up. So Sting is like, we got to unite against these guys or they're going to just keep kicking our asses. But then they're like, but whose side are you really on, Sting? And he's like, what? Do you not see him like bringing us all together? So they turn their back on him. And during the War Games match, a fake Sting comes out. So that was dumb. But Sting comes out, kicks everyone's ass on Team NWO, lays everyone out, goes over to Luger, flips him off, and leaves. And then he'll later cut a promo where he's facing away from the camera the entire time. He talks about how everyone turned their back on him, and he becomes the Crow. That's how that happens. He starts wearing the white and black face paint for literally the rest of his career, and wears those black jackets and carries around a baseball bat. Yeah, you remember this.
Yep, that's why I liked him.
Yeah.
I like a costume.
Yeah. He was awesome.
Got to drag
and
it
he
up.
would spend, and this is important because they didn't hot shot the angle. Hot shot meaning let's quickly put it on pay-per-view to get money off it. They built it up over a year. It's going to be Sting and Hogan, Starrcade 1997. We're still in 1996, Ben.
Mm-hmm. I'm becoming somewhat painfully aware. Yeah.
Oh, it's finally happened, Ben. So,
yeah, I think you're starting to get to me here as you describe in detail different wrestling matches. But you know.
So yeah, Sting would spend the next year fucking Batman style rappelling from the ceiling and killing members of the NWO with his baseball bat or his move.
I also enjoyed that as a child.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah, because it's awesome. He's like a fucking superhero. So that'll be important next time. But we're going to wrap this up with Hulk Hogan gets a new deal, like a piece of shit. Roddy Piper, who is ancient, returns to face Hulk Hogan at Starrcade.
I was there for this.
And oh yes, the book says WCW looks clownish because the NWO wins the US title, the tag titles, and the world title. And WCW just looks like a bunch of losers. And this is when Eric Bischoff is also revealed to be part of the NWO. Ben.
Doesn't he own Piper, the whole thing?
No, he hasn't been. Remember, he was powerbombed, Ben.
Okay.
So yeah, no. Piper wants to fight Hogan, and then Bischoff comes out and is like, yeah, that match isn't going to happen because I keep trying to get him to sign the contract, but he's not doing it. Wow. And then that's when it's revealed, Ben. Bischoff was the guy all along. Also, this is when a bunch of mid-card losers start to join the NWO because Bischoff is like, you're either with us or against us. And a bunch of losers come down, and this is where a lot of people argue the NWO starts getting really watered down. Anyway, Hogan signs a contract, faces Piper at Starrcade. Piper wins with a fucking sleeper hold, and everyone's like, oh my god, he fucking did it. He won. Wait, why is Hogan still holding the championship? It was a non-title match. Supposedly, that's what Piper asked for in storyline, too, which makes no fucking sense. It was a bait and switch, Ben. They made it seem like the match was for the world championship because Hogan was the world champion in the main event of the biggest show of the year. But it wasn't for the title.
Okay.
All right, but it's all on the up and up from here, Ben. Forever and ever.
Okay.
All right. Next time we'll talk about the death of WCW. Now that we've talked about the rise of WCW for over 90 minutes.
Yep.
It's finally happening. Nate's Nightmare November.
Yep.
So-
You're getting there.
So this will be a two-parter. So I'll release a bonus episode, hopefully around like Thanksgiving, and then even if these episodes do terribly in terms of metrics, I'll have a whole other episode. And since we don't do like an average, we just do a total number. This will still look like a success.
Okay. That's some WCW logic there.
Who are the patrons, the beautiful, beautiful patrons who made Nate's Nightmare November possible after we eliminated Ralph Nader as a possibility?
All right. I'm going to speed through this. John Bierce, actual author of The Mage Errant, The Rack, upcoming new project. Spooky Shy with a Y over on TikTok. Isekai Sensei Sama of the That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster podcast. And, of course, Jamie the Gravy Man of the If You Want the Gravy
it's
movie
finally
blog.
happening, Ben. Words about wrestling is everything. I have to get it all because this will never happen again. So I have to get it all out here. It's everything I ever wanted.
Yep. All right. I'm going to stop the recording now.
See you next week.
See you next week.